So here the sounds are produced by placing the tip of the tongue between the teeth. So that means the upper and lower set of teeth. And we do this for the two TH sounds in English. First, we have the unvoiced TH sound. So you place the tongue in between. I retract it as well and add a little vowel to make it easier to hear, but the sound it's almost inaudible actually without another one. And then the voiced one is the. So we have two example words, think and the article. Next, we have alveolar. Now, sounds that are alveolar are produced in the alveolar ridge, and that is really the place of articulation. So the sounds produced are produced by raising the tip of the tongue again. Use the tip of the tongue a lot to form sounds, and it's raised to the alveolar ridge. And in fact, usually there is contact there. Not maybe always, but quite often. So we have quite a lot of sounds that are actually formed in this way. So we have t and d and n, and for all three, the tip of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge. And then we have s and z. Now here there is a little small opening, so it's not complete closure, but it is, the small opening is at the alveolar ridge. And then we also have l, again there is contact, and I know this looks like a R, but it's not, it's the tap or the flap T, this little tap sound, as in butter, as pronounced by an American. Or, for example, a lot of. So here, lot, the T becomes a flap T, a lot of. It's just this little tap. And that, again, happens on the alveolar ridge. The tip of the tongue just taps against it. Now, remember, this is true for all of the sounds. You might think, okay, but they're all so different. How can they all have the same place of articulation? Yes, but these sounds do not have the same manner of articulation, okay? So they share the same place, but most of them have a different manner of articulation. And even if they have the same manner of articulation, like t and d, both plosives, they might differ in phonation. So yes, t unvoiced, d voiced. So there are other parameters that you have to remember. It's not just the place. And that is true not just for those alveolar sounds, but for all of the sounds. So let's have a look at the next place that's just behind the alveolar ridge. It's the post-alveolar sounds. And so it's literally just, you just move a little bit further back behind this little bump. I've shown it in the cross section. And we do have quite a number of sounds that are like produced here. And they are produced by raising to post-alveolar. But retroflex means that the sound is produced with the tip of the tongue curved back just behind the alveolar ridge, so post-alveolar really. But the specific thing is the tongue is curved backwards, and I've put a little arrow here to show that the tongue would move backwards. And that's when we pronounce the American R. And so instead of just saying rain like a Brit would do, or R, Americans would probably say rain, R, and R. And just the R sound, yeah, definitely, I can feel it. My tongue is curved back. So rain and R, R. Okay. Number 7, we have palatal. Again, this is a place to describe sounds. It's your palate really, in your mouth, and you can see it in green in the cross section. So those sounds are produced by raising the middle part of the tongue. Again, I showed this in yellow, to the hard palate. So the hard palate is the bit in the middle, really, the roof top of your mouth, you could say. And there's only one sound that is produced here, and that is y. yeah. So just say it and see where the middle bit of your tongue is lifted to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's your hard palate. And so yeah, we have a lot of times in English, usually when we have the spelling Y, for example, you or yes, many, many other words as well. Next one, we have vila. Now those sounds are produced by raising the back of the tongue. So we're not the tip, not the middle bit, but the back of the tongue to the soft palate. That's even further back from the hard palate and the velum. And the velum is the little thing that is hanging freely. If you open your mouth really wide in front of a mirror and you say ah, you can usually see it hanging from the roof of your mouth. And that's the velum. And so we raise the back of the tongue towards the soft palate and velum part, really at the back of our mouth. And so we have quite a few sounds here. We've got k, k. And again, say it and just pay attention to the tongue movement. K and g. Personally, I find this is the most obvious one. G. You can really feel the closure, and it's happening right here at the back, where the back of the tongue touches the soft palate and velum. G. And then also this nasal sound. It's really formed at the back. It is not like which was formed in against the alveolar ridge, which is really spelling ng or nk in English, is formed right at the back, totally different place of articulation. Okay, so we've got words like k, cook, g, go, and sing. Here the ng spelling as in sing. So very common sound because we have a lot of ing endings in English. Now, last but not least, we have glottal sounds. So here, the place of articulation all the way down in your throat really is the glottis, all right? Now, how are these produced? So the sounds are produced by using the glottis. And the glottis is not so much an articulator, but a space. It is the space between your vocal cords. We have two sounds that are produced here. First of all, the fricative. And here, the little restriction is right here in your vocal cords. They don't vibrate, they just close a little bit to make it a bit smaller. And so we form, if we just breathe in and out, it's a bit smaller, therefore a bit louder, comes a sound. And then we also have the glottal stop, that funny symbol, looks like a question mark, the wrong way around. And that we have in between the words and here really the glottis, just like the vocal cords close and open, and this is audible. It's called a glottal stop. If this is a bit strange, really do watch my other video on the glottal stop and you'll find out more. First of all, we have plosives. Sometimes they are also called stops. So you will see both of those terms being used. Now, how are they formed? Part of the vocal tract is closed off completely, so there will be full closure and no air can escape. But then the air is released suddenly with a sharp burst. And suddenly is really important because it leads to this little explosion of air. That's where we get the word plosive from. Here are all the plosives that we have in English. P as in pay and gap, b, b and table, and you can see here the closure is formed with both my lips. P, b. Then we have t in to and pet, d in day and mad, k in cat and make, g in go and bag. And another plosive sound that you might not have heard of before is the glottal stop, this funny looking symbol. That we have usually in between vowels. For example, when we say uh-oh, the glottal opens and closes and opens again and forms a glottal stop. So it's not in the word ah or, it's in between. If this is new to you, you want to find out more about the glottal stop, I have a specific video on the glottal stop. So all of those are plosives in English. In total, we have 7 plosive consonants in English. I added a little image for you to remember plosives, air explosion that you can hear. Hopefully it will help you remember the plosives. Now, of course, if you want to know where exactly the closure occurs, the place of articulation, make sure to check out my other video on that. And also, before we move on, quickly remember phonations. Some of these plosives are voiced and others are unvoiced. But again, there's a separate video on that. Let's move on. The next group, also a very big group, are the fricatives. Fricatives are formed very differently to plosives. Here, 2 articulators move close so that the air flows through a small opening. So there isn't complete closure, it's just that there is a very narrow space, a very small opening. And now what happens is that this causes the air turbulence that we can hear. It's really the friction of the air passing through this little small opening that we can hear when we form fricatives. Here are all the fricatives we have in English, as in fun or have, v as in very or have, in think and tooth. I know this is a funny symbol for the unvoiced TH sound. The voiced TH sound is the, as in they or breathe. Then we have in see or less, z in zebra or is. And then we have sh in shoe and push, and zh in pleasure and Asia. And last but not least, we have in, happy, and behind. So we have 9 fricatives in English. This is the biggest group, actually, of sounds. And in the sound sh, I think it's very noticeable. We have a little closure here, but it's not completely. It's just a small opening near the teeth. Sh, and the air passing through, we can hear the air turbulence. Of course, all of those have the same manner of articulation, but then our tongue and the position or movement of our tongue, of course, helps form the sound as well. That is why, yes, they're all fricatives, but obviously they do not all sound the same because the place where the small opening occurs is different, and also the tongue position will be different. And just like with the plosives, some of these are unvoiced and some of these are voiced, so they differ in quite a lot of other characteristics. Again, I added a little image to help you remember fricatives. So this is just like a cloud blowing out some wind, and I thought maybe this helps you remember fricatives has something to do with air turbulence and the little small opening. Let's have a look at the next group, number 3. Those are affricates. Now, those are actually quite easy to remember, I think, because they are basically a combination of the first 2 groups. So it's a combination of a plosive followed straight away by a fricative. And that means that the affricate sounds start by fully stopping the air first from leaving the vocal tract, but then the air is released, and not maybe as suddenly as with a plosive, a pure plosive. It's released through a small constricted opening. Okay, so there's a difference here. It's not like a full open release, it's just a small opening. And again, we can hear the air friction. And so we have, for example, t and sh forming ch, and this is now a new sound and classified as one sound. Ch as in child and march, so we have t straight away followed by sh, ch. And then we have the voiced counterpart, d and sh together, j, j. For example, in juice or orange. Here we have it at the end. So there are only two affricate sounds in English. Now, we have a fourth group, and those are the nasals. Now, nasals makes you think of nose, and that's quite good because the nose or the nasal cavity plays a big role when we produce nasal sounds. So here, the sound is blocked through either the lips or the tongue, somewhere in the vocal tract. It's blocked from leaving the mouth, and instead the sound is released through the nasal cavity. Now, the nasal cavity is the big space from our throat up through our nose. And we have three nasals in total. We have and And I've given you a couple of example words, but just before we have a look at them to demonstrate that the air is really released through the nose and not the mouth. So if I say and I pinch my nose, see what happens. The sound stops because it cannot really escape anymore, all right? And the same is true for and So the sound is really released through your nose. So we have in more or come, no or sun, and then the in sing and think. So we have this sound always when the spelling is NG or NK. There are three nasals in English, and I put an image of a nose to help you remember those. Next, we have an interesting group. Number 5 is the group of the approximants. Now, it's not a huge group, but the sounds that belong to this group still vary a little bit. So how are they formed? Approximants are formed when two articulators come together to form a narrow space in the mouth. And again, the air flows through it. You might think, wait, isn't it the same for the fricatives? Why are they a different group? There is a difference because this little space is not as small as with fricative sounds. So it flows through this narrow space, but it's not close enough or not small enough to make the air friction audible. So there's a different size in this small opening that is formed. Now, you could say, therefore, approximants are in between fricatives and vowel sounds. The vowel sounds is really no closure at all. The mouth is pretty wide open, like ah, e, very wide, and fricatives, sh. There's a very small opening, so the approximants are kind of in between those two groups in terms of opening of the mouth. And here are the 4 approximants that we have in English. First of all, we have y, as in yes or young. Then we have w, in when or in between. And then we have l, in light or milk. Yes, there is a dark and a light L. They don't really cause any difference in meaning, so we just treat it as one phoneme, l. And then we have r in right and carry. Now, because this group is a bit special and there are subgroups within approximants, I've created this little table for you to help you. Y and W, both approximants, that's true, but they are also often called glides or semi vowels. So you will see those terms being used. And they also share something in common. If you say y and w, just pay attention to your articulators. Y, there's little movement in your tongue when you form the sound y. And the same with w, there's movement in the lips, also articulators. So because of this movement, both of those are called transitional sounds. And that just means the articulators move during the sound production. Y and w. Now let's have a look at the other two, l and r. Those are also called liquids. Now, l is also called a lateral approximant, and in fact, very often you will see the other sounds y, w, and r also being called approximants with a specific adjective before it, and that usually refers to either the manner of articulation or the place, and that's just to distinguish them from one another. So, also called a lateral or a lateral approximant, and here, if you just form the sound, you can see the tip of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge, and the air flows on either side of the tongue out of the mouth. And so that is really what we call a lateral, but it's still an approximant because the opening is quite big and we hear a sound, but we don't hear the air friction. And r is sometimes also called a rotag. Now, I've used the symbol here from the Adrian Underhill chart. The one that you can see in the IPA looks a little bit different. It looks like an upside down r. And again, two images to help you remember those four approximate sounds. You can remember them maybe in their subgroups. So we have this figure skater here too, because they're gliding over the ice. And so those are the glides or the semi-vowels, y and w. And then l and r, the liquids. You've got this little image of some liquid, some water. Okay, and now we come to group number 6, and that's the tap. Now, again, this is a very specific sound. We call it usually the flap T. You can see the IPA symbol here. It looks like a bit of a funny R. And this is produced when the tongue just very quickly taps against the alveolar ridge. So there's only one flap T, a tap sound, and so it's always exactly the same production. It's always against the alveolar ridge. In English, we don't have any other tap sounds. So I've given you an example here. Again, you can see the IPA symbol, and then we have the word butter. Now, if you have more of a British English pronunciation like me, you probably just say butter and pronounce a full T sound, which is of course a plosive. However, Americans very often will say butter. So instead of a full T, they just do a little flap T tap. So it's just butter. Just say it a few times and pay attention to the movement of your tongue, especially the tip of your tongue. Butter. So there's this very quick tap against the alveolar ridge. We also have it in between words. So for example, here, a lot of, if I say it fast, a lot of. And in fact, here I would say the majority of English speakers will use a flat T sound, like this little flap instead of a full T plosive. A lot of, because usually we talk fast, it's much quicker to say this tap instead of a full plosive. And I put a little picture of a tap dancer. Hopefully this will help you remember the tap sound. So, the 12 vowel sounds of English. E, feet. I, fit. E, fell. Fat. Firm. O, food. Ah, fun. Ah, form. Ah, fox. Ah, far. And the schwa, for. This is in its weak form. Usually it's for, but if it's not stressed, it's fa. The 8 double vowel sounds of English, also called diphthongs. Number 1, A, cake. Number 2, I, cry. Number 3, oi, toy. Number 4, oh, no. Number 5, ow, mouse. Number 6, ear, bear. Number 7, ear, sphere. And number 8, oor,